Welcome officially, everybody. That was just take two. Um, so this is our second speaker series, and we have some very well qualified guests with us today. Our theme is lung health and COPD, and I am Frank Russo. I'm the principal investigator of the SingWell Project, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here. And I know many of you will already know about the SingWell Project, but for those that are new and tuning into what we're doing for the first time, I'll just say a little bit. This is a 7-year SHRC partnership grant, and it builds on prior work that Arla Good and I have been doing on singing and well-being. And what we're trying to do in this project grant is to develop the knowledge base around singing, communication, and well-being. Our initial intent was to focus on 5 groups that live with communication challenges, and COPD was and continues to be one of those core groups. We've expanded a little bit to consider groups we hadn't envisioned initially, but our mission still is to develop a solid knowledge base around what are the communication gains and what are the social well-being gains. And our network is continuing to collect evidence. Often that means seeding a new choir and tracking some of the benefits. And more recently, we've been trying to do this from a multi-site perspective, where we have teams setting up a new choir in a new city with a new group of individuals. And we're doing this in multiple cities, but we're always administering the same objective, subjective, and biological measures in order to really build up an evidence base and hopefully get to the point where people are confident about recommending singing as an intervention for people to explore. So that's the knowledge generation side of SingWell, and my co-lead in SingWell, Arla, is going to tell you about knowledge mobilization.
Thanks, Frank. Hi, everyone. So for those who don't know me, I'm Arla Good, co-director of the SingWell Project. And in addition to the knowledge generation that Frank was speaking to, a second main goal of SingWell is to mobilize the knowledge. So that means making sure that everything that we've learned through the research is ending up in the hands of people that can benefit from it. So in order to do that, we have global partnerships, and we are very, very grateful for these partnerships. They make sure that we're getting the information to those that can use it, whether that's someone living with lung disease, their family members, allied health professionals. We just want to make sure that what we learn through these research studies can actually support society in some way. So whether that's seeding new choirs or having doctors refer their patients to these choirs, we want to support that in any way we can. And so we are very grateful for our partner organizations who help us recruit for our studies and help us get the word out. So for example, putting on a speaker series, we're in collaboration with Choral Canada to do this. So we're grateful for our partnership with Choral Canada. And we're grateful for groups like the Lung Association and the Lung Health Foundation, the Alliance for Healthier Communities, that helped us promote these speaker series to ensure that we are reaching the right communities. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kathy, who will be your host for the rest of this hour. We're also very grateful for Kathy and the initiative that she took in setting up this important speaker series. So thank you, Kathy, and I'll pass it to you.
Thank you, Arla and Frank, for that great introduction. And hello to all of you who are joining us today. Before we get started, we just have a couple of housekeeping things that we want to mention before we begin. If you haven't already turned off your video, if your cameras, if you could, that would be great. It just helps us to maximize connectivity while we're here together and increase the quality of the conversation. as we go along. However, we do encourage you to use the chat feature to connect with each other as well as asking questions. When you logged into this meeting, you may have noticed that captions and language translations are available. I believe that our wonderful Catherine has put something in the chat to help you navigate that if it's tricky for you, because everyone's interface is a little bit different depending on what device that you're using. So just maybe take a peek at that. Also want to let you know that in order to maximize your time and the expertise of our panel, we'll be offering a 30-minute Q&A session following all the presentations. So if you have questions along the way, just put them in the chat and we'll direct your questions to the appropriate speaker during the Q&A. If you've only budgeted it for an hour of your time today, that's no problem. If you can't stay, we will be emailing a transcript of the questions and answers at a later date to you. Okay, we have almost 70 people who have registered for this conversation today, which is very exciting. And we're so pleased that you're here. To give a better sense of who's in our Zoom community today for this conversation, Catherine's going to post a poll. And if you could just take a minute to answer the questions, and then we can get a sense of who's here. So just go ahead and do that and see who is in our community today. Hey, so it looks like we've got an interesting mix of professionals and colleagues and perspectives and people, which is what this seminar series is all about. So this is really excellent. Thank you for taking the time to complete that poll. And just before we begin today's session, we would like to acknowledge that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples have been making and sharing music on these lands since time immemorial. On behalf of the SingWell Project, we recognize the privilege of living, working, and creating on their unceded territories. We honor their stewardship and are deeply inspired by their ongoing legacy of creating community, connection, and healing through song. So, we are all here today because we're curious about how singing together with other people enhances our human experience. As a choral director, I get to witness every week in rehearsals and throughout the year in performances what feels like the magic of connection and elation when people are singing together in front of me. And yet I know enough to know that there is more than magic involved. And so I'm really interested as well in what research has to tell me about what could be happening in those moments. And I'm very curious also about how singers experience all of this. The SingWell group wondered if other people felt the same way, and that is how this speaker series was born. Out of this really strong desire to create conversation and connection around group singing from three distinct perspectives: those who research it, those who lead it, and those who participate in it. As Frank mentioned, today's conversation will be centering around group singing for people living with lung-related health challenges. Our researcher today is Dr. Gunter Kreutz of the University of Karl von Ossietzky. He is a well-known and distinguished musicologist, and he is also a SingWell research theme leader on breathing disorders. His work has yielded many books, chapters, and publications that not only impact research today, but also shape future scholars interested in the connection between musicking and well-being. It is our pleasure to welcome Gunter to this conversation today. Welcome.
Thank you, Kathy. I'm very excited and very humbled and very honored to be part of this group now. It's great to have researchers and people involved in singing and in many ways together. And that's my intention and my point, to help building bridges between these different groups that are represented here. So let's first share my screen. I hope you can all see my slides now. So thumbs up if you can see. Okay, great, thank you. So it's about group singing and lung health. And the title already is a bit misleading because it's not just about groups, it's also about individuals, and it's about you. And it's also not just about lung health, because the lung is tied into our body into complex systems. So inevitably, we only use this as springboards into various domains. So I want to give you first a brief overview. So what is this all about in a nutshell? And who are the real experts? This is also a question I would like to raise. What does research say? Of course, in this time frame, this will not be covered entirely, but I will give you a little bit of a hint where this large train is moving to. And how is singing good for health? That's probably the question that we discuss together and that we share and try to learn and get more insight into, and perhaps draw some preliminary conclusions. So what is this about? We have, on the one hand, a very physical activity that involves the whole pathways that use the air that we use for breathing, and obviously this is a vital organ, and so our whole body is involved in this process. And also the structures along this pathway are all important in this, starting from the lungs, or below the lungs is the muscle groups that are there and that are sitting and separating abdomen and the lung. And we use a lot of this, and the practitioners know how to efficiently address these to produce sound. And this involves the vocal tract and also the space and the cavities in our throat, in our head, that we use for singing. So this whole complex system is working together, and we just not doing this alone. So we're doing this in groups, and the groups is feeding this experience, is somehow feeding back on us, on our body, and we're already lost in a very complicated setting, and all of a sudden the group setting and the singing for health is becoming a very, very complicated matter. But this should not be seen as discouraging, but more full of opportunities to do something with our bodies and our minds in creating something meaningful. And that's, I think, the main point. As long as we perceive these activities as rewarding and meaningful, we cannot go wrong. So our experience, what tells us this is good for us, we can rely on that. And if we feel it's not so good for us, we can maybe consider looking for other activities. I'm not saying this is the one way to happiness or to well-being, but it's one opportunity that may be of value for many people, but maybe not for all. But that's part of the story, that we can choose that lung health is acknowledging a wide range of strategy, and singing can be one efficient strategy. So who are the experts? On the one hand, you see there are myriads of papers coming out every day, expanding our knowledge on lung health, and this is very fast growing at all levels. And we also see treatment options are growing steadily, but they're also still at the point where some of the very severe issues like the COPD are not cannot be reversed, and they are just in a situation where we need strategies to manage these kind of lung issues. And medicine or evidence, what is called evidence-based medicine or clinical evidence, has, I think it's almost looks like a paradigm shift, but because more and more they focus on the person and the resources a person has. So in other words, the expertise in this complex matters is not just on the side of the medical or the health professionals, it's also on the side on the patients, because who is the expert of his or her own body? This can only be the patient. So your knowledge as if you're as being affected by lung issues, your expertise and your knowledge is required, and it's becoming more and more part of what is seen as clinical evidence. So why is that? There are some landmark papers that I've only chosen very small part of it or bits of it that I find quite important. And what clinical evidence seems to be based on the 4 Ps, what they call 4 Ps: predictive, preventive, personalized, and participative. Oh, it's a tongue twister. It really is. And these practices are at one of some of the cornerstones of clinical evidence. So the involvement of patients is really crucial to make progress, and I think this is also really a good news because it has turned around this paradigm that we go to the doctors to get prescription, because we go to doctors with our history, with our biography, with our resources, with what we have, with our culture, and make this part of healing processes or part of rehabilitation. And this is quite important, I find, or an important move. So what does this mean here? And let's look at a little bit more closely. What does participation mean? Or what is the idea behind it? It's a strategy aimed to predict, prevent, and personalize the process of care. And also, very importantly, to increase the individual's confidence to shift from a passive receiver of care to active, responsible, and aware driver of his or her wellness. So this gives us both responsibility, but also opportunity to share what we have and use this, and also get engaged into and I know from conversations with many doctors that they are really interested, and they are quite on board on this move of greater focus on patients and their cultural knowledge and their biographies and their experience, and also their preferences. So taking part in itself is a relevant health component. So singing is one option. And again, let me reiterate, it's maybe not the perfect option for everyone, but it's one option, and the same applies for many other strategies. And of course, a combination of different activities that we find meaningful and rewarding to us, the whole to fill the picture and our everyday lives with such activities is utterly important. So what does the research say? Well, I just said that we are overwhelmed by so much medical research, but when it comes to singing and lung health, the research is still in infancy. When we look at popular databases such as the PubMed, we find just 48 major studies over the last 25 years. Of course, there are many more studies who have implications also for lung health, or for aspects that are also relevant, that are indirectly relevant for us. But targeting this directly is still a relatively small area of research. The good news, however, is that when it comes to the psychosocial benefits, or these softer areas, then there's a lot more solid evidence to suggest that lung patients can participate or expect similar benefits as other neurological patients and many other groups. And as I said, what the lung is just part of the system, of a complex system that controls the airflow, and along this, all these structures are and processes are important. Maybe something we sometimes overlook. We overlook how vital swallowing is or coughing is, and I think we need also to look closely what the interaction at these activities, which seems like it's odd if we think about swallowing and coughing as everyday, but they are vitally important at the end of the day. And we haven't quite understood the implications, but here or there are some studies in relation to Parkinson's and singing that mention sometimes that it may affect swallowing and things like that. So there is a lot more to learn from practice. And I'm sure that we still will make progress. And thanks to this project, I think this will be also really helpful for the next coming years to expand our knowledge base. So how is singing good for your health? What we learn from the testimonies of existing programs, like some programs from the UK that you can easily Google and have website representations, the response is overwhelmingly positive. So people are really thrilled, and it's like opening new worlds. So advocating singing is really great for those who may not have knowledge or not have as good access, and maybe an idea to try this out. The research finding, again, they are quite mixed, and they do not always show improvements of lung functions in response to singing, but they do suggest important benefits such as reducing loneliness, gaining confidence, and providing structure in everyday life. And these can be really pillars in managing chronic diseases and managing our lives or living with such conditions. And there is a consensus paper published in 2016 by Stephen Clift and his group, which we all of us can read with great interest, because there is what is really a consensus that it is a meaningful tool for management alongside many other types of interventions. So in other words, there is little risk for doing something that would be harmful. And I think that's also a good news, that we can try out things and find out, is it something for me, and still feel in a safe space. There is not much risk involved. And again, it accommodates a range of social needs. We need to be entertained. We want to be entertained. We want companionship, and we want enjoy things in a sustainable way, meaning that we can schedule we can schedule our pleasure time or our reward by attending regular singing classes. I think this is also something, an aspect that we need structure in our lives, and singing groups can offer such structure. So singing is not just for the happy few who can sing, and also this barrier, which is probably perceived by a lot of people, is not really an issue, because singing comes with practicing, and people who have a voice usually can sing. So to conclude this little short introduction, is that every individual experience matters. It's not just the group that matters. It's your as individuals who taking part and have a voice and raise your voice, or maybe listen or be sung to. It all matters. So lung health must be placed in a larger context. It covers all aspects of respiratory system and activity along this pathway, which can be affected and can be changed, and you can notice changes, and it is not a random activity. It's a very strategic activity. that you can explore and learn how your body responds in this activity in a safe way. And also, let's finally mention the psychological benefits that we see. People feel happier, more content. And this is all really a serious part of clinical evidence and in personalized medicine. So we don't need to leave everything to the doctors or to molecular interventions, pharmacological interventions. We do have something in our hands we can do, or in our bodies and minds and in our lungs that can make a difference. So your experience and the advocacy really matters. So thank you for listening. I'm very curious about your questions and your responses and your feedback. And thank you, SingWell, for providing this platform. Is excellent. And I think we're on a good course. And thanks for everybody for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gunter. That was so interesting. And I really appreciate, as a practitioner, how you really brought the personhood around singing and what that can mean for those who like to do it, because you're correct, not everybody likes to sing. But that was very informative, and I'm sure there will be some great questions that people are popping into the chat or making note of. Thank you so much for those perspectives. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Our next presenter is our practitioner, Louise Drouin, who is also a researcher who's focusing on the benefits of adapted singing for people with chronic and incapacitating illnesses. Today, we're really fortunate because she's speaking to us from the perspective of leading group singing. In this role, Louise, of course, as a researcher, takes an evidence-based approach, but she lives a mission to make her choir fun, helpful, and accessible to those who most need it. We're really happy to have you here with us today, Louise.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm just about to manage to share the PowerPoint presentation. There, now use the proper, let me see, yes, there. Can you get the picture? Yeah, thank you. Well, to me, it is most thrilling to be here with you today. I think it's a first where I can present without thinking about research and stats and results and such, and that is much appreciated. So this is we will talk about this jolly hybrid French singing lawn choir that was started in Sherbrooke in Quebec, so in French Canada. And after you hear me, you will be meeting with two participants, one that sings with the choir in Sherbrooke and the other one that sings online. So that's very pleased and very happy that they can join in. And I can introduce some names that are really thrilling to me because they did make it possible for me to be here today. I was a graphic artist for decades before I turned into what I'm doing now. And this first one, Ewan Edwards, you probably know him in English Canada too, but in Quebec he was warmly loved and respected and honored as a conductor of the choir for the Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal for decades. And I had the pleasure and the luck to get to meet him and to be conducted under his baton for the joy of discovering that somebody shared the same as me in thinking that the meaning of the words, the meaning of the music, the feeling of it, the history, the composers, what he meant to do by it is so important. It comes long before the notes. And I really thank him warmly for this inspiration. I wouldn't have been going back to university when I was turning 50 in music without his influence. Next is Ian Morrison and Stephen Clift. Stephen Clift has been with you, SingWell, before. Ian Morrison had to retire after his wonderful, extraordinary thing as he did with that first choir, I believe, that was showing improvement on the lung function for people with lung issues. And he's been helpful, as Stephen Clift has been to us, to me, to get to develop our project here in French Canada. So I salute him warmly. Isabelle Kreutz, I don't think she knows me, although we've met because she used to be the director of my director when I was doing the masters. And to me, she's such an inspiration, boosting, expanding knowledge of music and the brain. A strong woman, and I admire her greatly. And how do one go about doing this sort of thing in the first place? Why do this? And I'll start with love, although it is a term that we may not see that much in research, but I find it fundamental in this type of work, starting with a loved husband who died of COPD, and I was a caregiver, so I could feel what it does to be lacking the breath and lacking this so fundamental human need. And then there was the senior thing. I'm a gerontologist, and that's what I've trained in with the music, because I could see how aging could be so lonely, and our music could be so helpful. And we are getting older all across the world. It is a heavy tendency, and we do need to live these extra years as well as possible, I believe, in joy, in expression, and well surrounded. And I believe in this project fitting in these terms. Improvement is a word like Professor Kreutz was mentioning. The shortness of breath, the loss of energy and vocal loss could be improved. Well, that's what I have been witnessing, that it can help. And the fun of it, the inexhaustible source of exchange, music, and progress, the wonderful micro-civilization, to me, is a choir. Once a week, coming to what this choir is about, what this group singing, but I like to call it choir. Although group singing is okay, sometimes that's all it is about, like singing around a fire. But I like to improve things a bit, and some of the participants have a lot of knowledge, and those need something a little bit more demanding. So we do have part songs as well as plain folk songs. So how does it go about? It's lasting for 2 hours. I was surprised that it could do 2 hours. I was warned that it could be much too long and too tiresome, but it doesn't seem to be, because it's been going on now for quite some time with this kind of frame. So we start with 15 minutes where people do not, it's not starting yet, so they can exchange, they can talk together, it can be informal. Then you start with the relaxing exercise, where it is wonderful to get the silence to start with, and to move into a new mood, to move into song by the breathing to start with, and the relaxing. Then the exercises follow with a physical exercise with a specialist, and then with a vocal exercise with either me or another conductor. And then we go on with the singing and the break time and singing again and ending. And I'd like to keep more details for the end for the questions, unless you think it is preferable to spend time there now. But I think I'd rather jump ahead.
Please do. Thank you, Louise.
Okay. A lot of teamwork and planning. One of the joyful things about this job to me is this, exactly. I've got an accordionist who was once assisting one of our concerts, who is giving us time now as a volunteer, with the pianist already there, and with Louise, that will speaking with us later, that has been in the group singing for the study, but is now there as a volunteer. And there's the picture of that lady on the left, that is she's the therapist, retiree pulmonary therapist that's helping us out greatly, and she's also a singer. And there was that interest from CBC, our local CBC, Radio Canada, that was taken in May. You can hear a little bit of it. Just a quick sample. Joelle is our youth. She's the young one who's learning to do this thing, and we switch over. Now she's there for us now because the choir is starting at 1, and I won't be able to be there on time. And on the right, you see what it implies to do the planning of such a choir. Huh? It looks like it's all fun and we're just there and then enjoying things. Well, I do enjoy it, but there's a lot of preparation involved, like this sketch on the right about how are we going to do this with a hybrid? Where are we going to put the microphone? Where are we going to put the camera? Where are we going to put the screen and everything? So all that has got to be settled, and it's still not settled, actually, because we still try to improve every time we can with everybody's comments, but you need to plan ahead.
Louise, I apologize for interrupting, but we were not able to hear that audio clip. The
Oh, you
sound.
were not? Oh,
No,
it was
I
not
don't know.
shared.
Maybe you can just play it again at the end if you wanted to have it to access it from a different place.
Yeah.
There's lots of chat that people would love to hear it. So would you like to move on and then play it at the end?
Okay, perhaps try it. It was included in the PowerPoint, so I'm not sure I can share it otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Louise.
Okay. Thank you for this, Kathy. The no one fails is the one instruction that I took most seriously from, amongst them was Adam Lewis in Great who spent a long time analyzing what you can do best with those choirs. And to me, that is the most important of all. No one fails means that we do care, that everybody feel that they can manage it, even though they're off tune, they're off key altogether, even though they be coughing at times, even though they think they can't manage, everybody's included. We encourage each other to help out because some of them are more advanced, some of them are less. We also do offer individual care if they need to communicate individually. We'll spend some time on that, and we do provide lots of links and materials so that they can get to some help themselves, some applications where they can have the notes and they can check themselves, all sorts of things of that kind. And I think I'm on time for the testimonials, actually. Right? I'm so pleased with this. So we'll be starting with Louise, who's right at the side, and we'll be there for answering your questions afterwards. I did save it for last. Lots of content. Thank you.
You did so well. Before we hear from Louise, I just want to repeat something you said that I've written down because I think it's one of the most beautiful descriptions of singing in a group that I've ever heard. Enjoy in expression and well connected. It really encapsulates what it is to have that singing experience with others. So thank you for that. And I will be tucking that away for future use because that's really a beautiful way of putting that.
Thank you.
And again, thanks for just humanizing the whole process. You know, the joy and the love and even your own purpose for doing this for other people when you have seen your own spouse suffer from these symptoms. So thank you so very much for sharing that. And I know there will be great questions for you after. And I just really appreciate your time and expertise.
Oh, thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Now we have Louise.
Now we're Louise.
That's right. I would just want to introduce Louise, if that's okay, really quickly. Louise has shared with me that he grew up listening to Saturday afternoon at the opera all through his life. So singing has always played a role for him throughout the course of his life. And for the past 20 years or so, he's been working with Louise and assisting her in different choirs for people living with lung health challenges. So we're really excited now to hear about your perspectives, Louise, and thank you for sharing and being here today.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you very much for the introduction, and good afternoon to all. As was just mentioned, for the past few years, I've been helping Louise Drouin and different groups of singers, both people with or without targeted pathologies, like, for example, breathing problems. My job basically has been, like, besides timekeeping, I've been helping people by modeling, like singing a part, helping them learn the part, helping other singers like avoid singing off key, transporting equipment, and assorted tasks. Anyway, maybe to come to the crux of what I want to say is, in a nutshell, my observation has been that a majority of participants, I basically wrote an overwhelming majority of participants experience a feeling of enjoyment, maybe partly due to, at least in my mind, to the fact that I enjoy cracking jokes every now and then spontaneously forming, and as I say, sometimes at appropriate moments, a comedy duo with Louise. You know, she graciously taking on the role of the straight man. And for this, I thank her. Without her support, my comedy would be maybe a little dreadful sometimes. Anyway, comic relief aside, for people having the opportunity to go out, to get out of the house, to go out and being able to meet people who share the same interest and affliction has a therapeutic effect. There's no doubt in my mind. I have no objective data, let's say, to either prove or disprove my statement. And I have, as an actor, not an observer, an actor, little interest in acquiring statistical data. That's a different viewpoint. As a singer, I'm convinced this attitude is part and parcel of the healing dynamics we are dealing with. Furthermore, or in other words, having fun while wheezing away at a melody is, time and time again, as I have seen around me and in my own experience, a harbinger of joy, relaxation, warmth, and cordiality. In this case, subjectivity is not a word, or I wrote down a dirty word. I shouldn't be saying this. It is not a word to be avoided. I think mutual support towards a common goal, mutual acceptance of personal limitations, the suspension of judgment, artistic musical experience, the experience of creating something, personal responsibility and creativity are some of the factors behind the drive to counteract the shortcomings of wounded organs and to bring about a healing of spirits as an added bonus. And that last part, healing of spirits, I recognize in what Dr. Kreutz's presentation talked about combating loneliness, building self-confidence, and building structure in one's life. Finally, and let me finish with this, paradoxically, as an actor and not an observer, I do feel an urge towards a minimum of talk about the subject. For me, discretion about the process appears to be another essential part of the process, for this actor at least. Thank you for having me here.
Merci, Louis.
Oh, Louis, thank you so much. That was really inspiring. And I agree that I think maybe that's what I was referring to about that magic of singing in a group, and leading groups. It definitely is a feeling that is difficult to quantify. And yet the research can tell us what's happening sometimes to explain that so that we can extend that as an opportunity for healing and connection and joy and well-being to others who might not otherwise consider it. They might not, as you know, Gunter said, might not know that they can sing, but they do have a voice. Anyone with a voice can sing. So thank you for those perspectives. That's
Right brain, left brain thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was really great. Just keep in mind, everyone, that if you have questions for our wonderful presenters, just and you're not jotting them down, feel free to put them in the chats, and we can take care of that for you at the end when we go into the Q&A. Also, sometimes when we embed audio or video into PowerPoint, it doesn't often translate when we're sharing our screens. So Catherine has actually put a link to that Radio Canada interview that Louise was referring to. So you'll just find that in the chat if that's helpful for you to listen to afterward. Yeah. And now we have Christiane. Christiane shared with me that she was diagnosed with COPD about 6 years ago and was later introduced as a result to the Quebec Pulmonary Association during COVID. And that experience led her to Louise's choir, which marked the beginning of what she has described as a wonderful experience for her. So Christiane, we'd love for you to turn on your camera when you're ready, and we'd love to hear your perspectives as a participant.
Okay, I was diagnosed 6 years ago with COPD. At the same time, I had been retired from work on medical medical reasons. So I ended up being alone at home, sick, and it was a very, very, I would say, and then COVID popped up and everything. So that part was very, very a dark place to be. I had anxiety. I was even suicidal at times. I experienced loneliness. I was scared of the future or the lack of it because you don't know. And the doctors, they just diagnose you and they say, well, you have COPD, take your pumps, do this, do that. But there's no explanation or help, or they play a great part in this, and the fact that you're just told something and that they don't give you an opportunity. Even I was the one to ask, is there something that I could do to, well, of course, quitting smoking was the one thing I had to do first, and I did. So I've been 6 years without smoking, and then I tried through them to get the readaptation that uses physical things, exercise and all that. And that came in with COVID. So that's when we started with the Zoom thing. And then all of a sudden I received a message from them. There's somebody in Sherbrooke who wants to do maybe mixed thing with the Zoom and the choir. And listen, I told Louise, I told everyone, I have no voice. I don't believe that I have a good voice, and especially now with the pumps that I take, and I get like right now my voice is very raunchy, and I'm right in the middle of a exacerbation of COPD, so I'm taking a lot of medications, and I'm not at my top here. But I told them, I said, I'm a Celine Dion in my car, and when I'm alone and nobody hears me, I sing, and I love singing. So when I joined that choir, with a few people that I knew from the Zoom and the exercises. So now we've become like this little community. There's all of us in Zoom, and there's the group that we sing along with. And I'm alone in my room here, so no judgment from nobody. I can sing my heart out, and even if I'm off key or something, nobody judges me. And there's a benefit of having inhalothérapeute. I don't know how to can't remember the name in English. That's there to help us with. She gives us capsules of information, and I learned a lot more about my disease there, and learned how to use my lungs and all that. So I can say now that this experience with the choir has given me sharing with other people, because we do have a part of sharing. You do create how do you say that? Friendliness, you know what I mean? L'amitié with other people. Friendship, thank you, honey. Friendship. And there's the learning, because we go a bit further. There's songs that I never thought of singing, and some have become my favorite, and they're canons, you know, when you have different people coming in at different time. And now we're practicing one that's that is really nice, that I love, Gloria. And you know, so you exercise, you learn. I never learned to read a partition before, and now I'm starting to get interested by it and learning and watching, and you know, so there's a lot of your mind working too. And it's nice because it brings it enables anybody to do it, whatever you stage of the disease you're at. There's some people that sing with the oxygen tube in their nose, and it makes it. And you know, I learned that I can do so much more than I thought. It made me how should I say, I had given up on so many things in life, and now, oh, there's one thing though that I learned from sharing, and that's important. I think that at one point, when I was very, very, very depressed and all that, I went to see my doctor, and I finally asked help because I was in a dark place. And I asked other people online, did anybody is on antidepressors, and we were 8 online at the time, and 4 of us were using those. So, you know, when you get diagnosed, you don't anticipate all that. And now I find that I have made so much progress. I'm living again. And Louise will tell you, 4 weeks ago, I made the drive with one of the other Zoom singer and my husband. That was our driver. So he drove us there. It's a 2-hour drive. There we had lunch with Louise, and then we sang as a group. And I was a bit stressed for the first, I don't know how many minutes, because for once I was singing with a group. But it's such an experience. It's very different. It's nice to sing, and it's too bad for me it's a 2-hour go, 2-hour come back drive, because I would do it more often for sure. But I'm so grateful that I can do it, that we're in a stage of life where, you know, Zoom is available, and we can share things like that, and we can do things like that. So even when I'm not feeling that good, when it's cold outside, when there's snow, we're still there. They're still there every Friday. And I never thought, I said, I'm going to try it. You know, I tried it the first session there, and I've been there. This is my 5th session now, 4th or 5th session. So I'm so grateful for that. And I think it's, I know Gunter said a lot of things, and like people they do appreciate, and it does make a difference, and does make you feel like you took a little bit of control over something that you don't control, the disease, but you're helping yourself, and you're doing stuff that is positive for it, and that it won't cure me. I know it won't cure me. Wherever I'm at, I'm trying to keep up what I've not lost yet, and it gives me hope. Gives me a lot of hope. So thank you to all that group of everybody here who's doing this research, of Louise, who's taking such good care of us, of Louis, who's been there. You know, everybody. I'm getting emotional here because it's so true that it does help people. So don't let go. please don't let go of us. Thank you.
Oh, Christiane, I'm emotional now too.
I'm emotional too. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Thank you for sharing the authenticity of your experience and your journey through your health crises and your mental health crises. And thank you for the reminder that the work that's happening, the people who are facilitating this work, like Louise, the people who are researching this work, like so many of the, like that the SingWell Project oversees, it really is important and it really is changing lives. And I think that this is a beautiful way to end this particular session, because that's really what this is about, is to bring meaning and value of everyone's perspective into this space so that we can all understand that. I think you said it changed your life, it saved your life, that really is an outcome of the work that people are doing and the opportunities that creates for people. Thank you so, so much for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So my goodness, an hour has flown by so quickly in this really, really interesting conversation that has been a result of Gunter's expertise and Louise's expertise and the experience and personal expertise of Louise and Christiane. So thank you so much. It was really, really so enlightening for me. I just want to do a little wrap up before we go into our Q&A. Some follow-up information will be coming your way, including a request for information from singing leaders and also invitations to participate in some of our ongoing research that will be related to the development of our accreditation program. So please watch for that survey coming your way. Our next conversation will be on January 17th, 2025, which is hard to believe is coming so quickly. The topic for that session will be group singing and aphasia. Dr. Jessica Richardson and Ellen Bernstein Ellis will be our speakers, along with some participants as well. And we'd love for you to join us for that session as well. I believe registration will be on our site through Eventbrite, just like you did for today. We do hope that you can join us for a brief Q&A with our speakers. But if not, we thank you so much for joining us today. Please leave your questions in the chat if you have them before you go, and we hope to see you in the new year. So a round of applause for our presenters today. Thank you so very much. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you all. So, Catherine, have there been questions in the chat that I should start to ask? If not, we can please start to ask your questions. I haven't seen them coming through, but I've been watching my screen, so we'll see.
No questions yet, but if anyone has any questions for any of our presenters today, please feel free to leave them in the chat, or you can use the Q&A function.
I do have a question for Gunter, if that's all right. Gunter, what, from your perspective as a researcher, are the implications of the research for practitioners? So, you talked about bridging that gap between research and practice. What do you think some of the implications are for people like Louise and others who are leading singing groups for people with lung health challenges?
Thank you. That's a great question. Well, well, it's a very, very deep question also. So I hesitate to give just fire away. I think it gives what's the implications for practitioners. I think to me it's important to give the message that the practice comes before the research. If it was the other way around, then we would still live in caves, right? So the practice must come first. So share what you experience, share it with the people around you, share it with doctors, share it, go talk about it, and insist that you make these experiences. Because experience is, from Karl Popper, experience is not a scientific fact. That's what we learned all the time. But what is the basis of research? It is at the end of the day, it is experience. So, and you can count on doctors that they will nowadays, many of them, be more open. So if you meet 5 doctors who are totally tied up and closed and just want to prescribe pills, that's fair enough. But number 6 will be open. So don't give up. And keep on the conversation with them about your experiences. And I think that will inevitably create a momentum to them to stop and think and say, well, I think I have to reconsider my approach to my patients. And I mean, there's a big move of social prescribing, but I'm not. I like the idea, but I don't like the word prescribing because it's maybe opportunities, giving a chat and going into a conversation, going into some interaction. I think that's fair. It's prescribing is a prescription is not what we want. It puts us in a defensive position, but we should not be in a defensive position. We should be in an equal level with the people. We are experts of ourselves, and also people affected with conditions are experts of. They're becoming inevitably experts of what their body can do, and they learn how to expand their range of opportunities by practices like singing. And this is what we learn. Sorry, I stop here, but that's my brief answer.
No, you're right. That was a really big question. And I thank you for finding such a succinct answer to that. Very interesting. And the piece about not giving up, whether you are someone looking for a solution like Christiane was talking to, or someone who believes in the benefits of that just from a practical perspective, as Louise has spoken to today, just to not give up and continue to build those relationships until it becomes more accessible to more people. Thank you so much for that. Louise, did you want to comment on Gunter's statement from your perspective?
Well, I'm touched, for certain. I'm happy to read all those notes as well. I could go on and discourse about all sorts of questions, but I'm all busy. But thanks very much for this invitation, and thank you, Dr. Kreutz, for sharing these thoughts. And that experience coming first is is hitting a point with me, a very fragile one, because it's unusual for a researcher to do as well. The choir conducting at the same time and prepare and do all that. We call it terrain. You're on the grounds and you're there with the people all the time. So, and collecting qualitative data is making it even more so the experimental thing. So I thank you all very much for being there and for sharing, for appreciating this wonderful direction SingWell. The SingWell group is allowing us to see through with the people who are so much in need of getting together and doing something so harmonious as music, yes, to make them feel part of something beautiful when they're hitting the grounds often with the medical pills and the medical suffering that go with all this waiting for news and waiting for results and doing tests all the time, doing music together and learning, thinking that's doing something you thought you never could do before, and suddenly you've got people there applauding you when you're doing a concert a few months later. To me, it's just wonderful. So I'm very lucky to be part of it, I feel. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for facilitating it. We do have some other questions coming in. One question is for Gunter. You mentioned that research on group singing involving lung function is not conclusive. Can you expand on that briefly?
Thank you. It's a great question. I mean the reasons why this is not conclusive is that I think this research has started from actually from not a very firm background of building hypotheses. So it's lots of exploratory work. And as we learn more from practice and from where to really to look at, I think we can get in a better position to see where singing can be effective and how it can be effective. In some areas, it turns out that the studies who run for a longer time show greater effects than the ones who only run for 6 weeks or 3 months or so. But that's our life as researchers is very constrained that we have funding for a certain amount of time. So SingWell is a great opportunity to expand this time windows, although the projects within SingWell also are more in a shorter time scale. So I don't believe that there is nothing in it in long term, and we have testimonies heard here that it takes sometimes things happen quite quickly, but I think that we need more long-term studies to tease out the effectiveness, and but also there's so many groups, individual differences involved, and context that we need a huge efforts, research efforts to get to the bottom of this.
And thank you for that. And we have another question for you from our own Frank Russo. Would you say that expiration pressure is one of the more consistent gains for lung health?
I'm sorry, inspiration is what I meant to say, not expiration.
Inspiration.
No, I mistyped, yeah.
Okay, sorry, Frank.
Frank, you are more an expert on the physical sides of. I don't feel in a position to have a good answer to that. What's your hunch?
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. I mean, Arla might have an additional thought, but that one seems to be the most consistent. But just to echo what you're saying, a lot of the studies are more exploratory. They're not well powered. And so you have to sift. It's like you're looking at the evidence through blurry glass. Like we do not have a clean look at what the benefits are. But from looking through this dirty glass, I feel that inspiration pressure is one valuable outcome.
Okay, but then we have to follow up. What does that mean? It's one physical indicator, but does it turn around lives? or what is the implication from that? I mean, we make a lot of observations, but to translate that into tangible interpretation of improvements, or it's a signal that we see, but what does it mean is still an open question, I assume.
So one of the things that has come up for us in some of the more qualitative research we're doing in terms of speaking with other group singing facilitators, leaders, and choir directors is how do we remove barriers to participation? Because some people think they don't like singing, and maybe that was something those of us who are in this space who have ever led a singing group know. How many people have said to us, oh, I can't sing. Somewhere along the line, some grade 2 teacher or some such thing, or a parent or an uncle, somebody has said to us, we can't sing. And that becomes part of our belief system. And so the idea of singing in a group becomes something unimaginable to us. So I wanted to ask Christiane if that was how you felt as a participant when this was brought to you as an opportunity to well, you didn't know at the time. You just felt at the time, just to paraphrase what you've said, is to connect and to do something that might be beneficial. So what was your feeling about being in a choir prior to that?
Oh my God. Like, I don't know how many times Louise can vouch for that. I don't know how many times I said I can't sing. I can't sing, and the Zoom, because there's we have a little bit of a technical problem with the Zoom, is that we can't sing at the same time as a choir that's together, because of it's the lagging of the connections, you know. So that makes it very, very. We all come in at different times, and it's bad. So even now, when we tried it, I can't listen to that and sing. So I don't know how many times I told Louise I can't sing, and makes it marvelous, because I sing with them in my room. Nobody hears me, nobody judges me. And you're right, it's often somebody who told us something somewhere in our life that because a voice is a personal thing. A voice identifies you. It's, you pick up the phone, and just by the voice of the person, you know who it is. So voice is a very personal thing. And I was also born with a syndrome. I don't have full hands, and so I was studying in a convent when I was a young girl, and they didn't want me to learn piano, because they said to my parents I didn't have enough fingers and I wouldn't be able to do it, and that. And then there was also a choirs of bells. They didn't let me do it either, because I didn't have enough fingers to put in the white gloves that you had to wear, and they thought it would look odd. So you see, me and music, we had this thing of not being very friendly. I never learned it because they wouldn't let me try it, and then all of a sudden, Louise tells me, no, you can sing. You have a voice, you can sing. Anybody who has a voice. And I don't know, you heard me live when I went there. I never got a chance to ask you if I could sing or not, but I did sing. I did sing with the group. I was like not singing well at the beginning, but after getting in, and it's so much fun. It is fun. I was singing. I was singing with them. I didn't even think of my voice there. And you know, like with the pumps and everything, you do lose your voice. And right now, I told you I've been sick for 2 weeks with exacerbation of it. So I'm on pills and I'm on pumps and this and that. But I'm here today, and I couldn't be there for the last 2 weeks for other reasons. But I'm here today because I miss my group. I miss my friends, and I want to sing today.
Right.
So it is.
Sorry, Christiane, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to take too much time. It's just that, no, it works. And you're right when you say somebody somewhere told me that I couldn't sing. Somebody somewhere told me that I couldn't play piano. And I never tried the piano, but I can try singing. And now Louise always gives us little hints about how to read the notes and all that. And I did buy myself a book, and I said, you know, I gotta take time to read on it, because I want to learn what the crush and what a black and a white and how they're placed, and because I gotta know this. But it keeps your mind, you know, active, because I'm turning 65 soon, and you know, when you figure that, you know, you got to keep going. So I like it. So that's it.
So then what removed the barrier for you was Louise. So your facilitator
was
said,
great
you can
for
do it.
that. The fact that I could hide behind the Zoom
Yeah,
for
the
a
Zoom.
little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it possible even for the people in Sherbrooke who can go out, because there's a lot of snow, and some days you just can't breathe outside in the winter. It's too hard. So they can still do it from home. That makes it marvelous. The technology now today that's making everything available, and it was my little hiding thing, you know, that I hid behind. You can't hear me. I can sing, but I don't hear me, you know. But she kept on telling me, no, you can sing. And when I went there, nobody told me that I was off key. Nobody told me that I was not doing right. And I was standing right in front line there. And it made me feel good. It made me feel real good. It made me feel part of that group more by being there. I really liked it.
You found your voice and you found community.
Yes, I did.
Cool. That's beautiful.
I did.
Louise or Louis, would you like to comment on that oh, sorry, is there a question? No. Louise, would you like to comment on your experience in terms of, sounds like you've come at this from a place of lots of exposure to music, lots of, you know, a relationship with music that was maybe a little more solidified prior to you joining the choir or being part of the choir?
Oh, definitely, definitely. You know, I'm a loss for words here. You just want me to talk about my experience?
I think the question that I'm asking, because there may be people who are in this space who are thinking maybe they would like to, maybe they would have the ability and the inspiration to start a group. And one of the difficult things about starting a singing group for any purpose or any population, but today the population that we're talking about is, you know, people who struggle with their lung health, is how to get people there, how to break down any belief system that, you know, I'm not good enough to sing in a group. So I'm just kind of wondering if there were any barriers to that for you, or if you just jumped in both feet first.
Maybe on the self-confidence level, maybe that is where, you know, I got help, and basically I can articulate, you know, the theory of it all, but the experience, you know, changing my beliefs, you know, it's like changing an opinion that maybe somebody gave me, changing it into an injunction, you know, and, you know, accepting that injunction, you know, either from parental injunction or social injunction, you know, and that's basically what it is changing your belief system, saying, no, this is not right, you know, and it's a gradual process. You just don't change an 80%, you know, belief into a 10% belief overnight. You got to work at it and keep repeating, you know. You keep working at it until, you know, basically you say, well, my belief is now 5%, and that's enough for me to change, both in my attitude and my actions. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. It
Okay.
does. So practitioners out there, what the work that you're doing is really important. And as Louise said, it's collecting qualitative data continuously, but not having time to analyze.
Tell me about it.
So thank you. If you're out there and you're a practitioner and you're part of this conversation today, thank you for the work that you do. It makes a difference. To the researchers who help inform our practices, thank you for what you do to not just inform our practices, but to validate what we're doing and the reasons that we are doing it. Really, really important. Louise, I just have one last question for you then. As a practitioner, what would you say to the others who might be thinking about starting a singing group? Because we do want to create this, one of the objectives that SingWell has is to create all this possibility for people to improve their health and social well-being through singing in groups. So what would your advice to someone, this is another huge question, much like I asked Gunter earlier, but what would be your one kernel of advice for those people who were thinking about starting a singing group for people who struggle with lung health?
That's a good question. I came from a different corridor to it because it was a research topic. So the medical people in immunology being involved was major. You know, it really was the start because they knew who needed it. They knew who they recommended to pulmonary rehabilitation. And that was the start for us. And now that I see that it's going on with the community center and people are paying to come in, it's not a research anymore, and that the community center advertises it, and also that they do spend energy into involving health projects, health classes in their activities already with kinesiologists and such. So to me, that's the point. That's the view that I have met, that I have known, I've got to experience myself. But if it was to start elsewhere, I think it's it probably is feasible from, you know, an individual who's convinced that it can reach people and all that, but it's a lot of work. And I really am convinced that pulmonary associations and the medical professionals are the key to start with, and they should be involved into spreading the news. There should be a channel where you can communicate and you can invite him and encourage the training of enough enough conductors to do the job when it gets popular. Yeah.
Can I add something? The answer to your question before, in a nutshell, is networking.
Mm-hmm.
You got to network. Either medical professionals, clubs or associations that cater to the needs of retirees or people who have different affections. Different pathologies. Networking I think is the key.
And
Thank you.
that's how it was done in UK. That's how Morrison and Clift managed to get it started with the pulmonary, their lung association. And I believe that's what's needed. I don't think it can be done with too easily. Perhaps it's feasible, but I don't see how it can be done with just individuals in one spot. I don't think so.
That's great advice, and it picks up on what Gunter was saying about if you've asked 5 doctors, go ahead and ask the 6th. And to bring it full. Sorry, yes, please.
Maybe I can just. My little story is I was equipped with a bunch of studies showing the benefits of singing for health into a doctor's office, a head doctor, and I just said I think a singing group would be a good idea. And before I could present all my evidence, she said, "Oh, it's a good idea. We should go ahead and do it." And it was much easier than I thought. But maybe I was just lucky. And it's a singing group for lung health that is located at a hospital in Oldenburg, and it started before the pandemic, and then the pandemic killed it. And then there was another doctor. She retired, and I was a bit worried whether it would be carried on. But they carry it on, and they find the budget. So it's not, there is no donation for that from anywhere. It's the hospital budget that pays for it, which is unusual because they don't have any money usually for that. So I was very lucky on many accounts. So she didn't know what I was doing. Just talking to her like a private person almost, and say, "Well, wouldn't you think?" And she said, "Oh, maybe there's this level of underdiagnosed depression in my patients, so it may be a good idea to cheer them up." And that was enough. So it may be, it could be easier than one thinks. That's my experience. But yeah, it's only one case.
Thank you. Well, to bring it back full circle to what Arla said.
Perhaps just one detail, Kathy, that I'd like to bring forth, because I will have to leave as well, is that the hybrid idea to bring the choir to people at home so that they hear and feel like they're in a choir, although they're not, they're away. To me, it is an opening for making it easier to spread as well. Like we have people from hundreds of kilometers away that's joining in online. And that to me is the future. And after the COVID, it's even more so the future. And for people who are so sensitive, so fragile of catching viruses, it's ideal to have this, but it is not easy to deal with. Just one functioning with it is not an easy thing, but it is working. I'm pleased to acknowledge that. I'm glad that we tried it out, and I believe it is a way to do in the future, an avenue to explore. Yeah.
I can tell you, Louise, I'm happy that you persevered.
We are too. So there was at the recent SingWell Symposium last week, someone was sharing some research about different technologies that make online singing easier. And then just a final word before I say goodbye is Arla was mentioning that SingWell has developed those relationships, with those partnerships. SingWell really understands that it's a collective effort to bring people to the moments that were shared today from boots on the ground with practitioners and participants, it all like really growing a community where we all have the same thing in mind. Researchers see what the benefits could be, practitioners understand how to bring that to fruition. But those partnerships, I agree with you, are really, really important in making that happen. So be sure to connect with us if you're thinking that's something you'd like to do, and perhaps we can move you in a direction that would be helpful. Unless Arla and Frank have anything they'd like to say.
I mean, I just want to thank you again, Kathy, for another fabulous session. It's amazing to hear these different perspectives. Like, it really is what SingWell's trying to do, is to bridge the gaps between the researchers, the practitioners, and the individuals who are living with these communication challenges. So it's wonderful to have everybody here in the same space having a conversation. And I'm feeling inspired, like I left feeling inspired last time. So thank you, Kathy.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Frank, is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Is Frank still here?
He might have.
Frank has a meeting at 1:30.
Okay. So then, on behalf of everyone at the SingWell Project, I thank you all for giving us your time today, for being part of this conversation. Listeners are an important part of conversations too. So
thank you so much to our speakers.
Thank you.
Really
And
appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So great. So inspiring. Gunter and Louise and Louis and Christiane, thank you for your time and your expertise. And wishing you all a happy holiday season as it comes up. And maybe we hope to see you in January for our next session.
Okay.
Feel well, everyone. Okay,
Be well.
thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you all. Merci.
Merci.
Peace, bye.
Au revoir.